Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar. Going to be an exciting one. Want to get started here. Hold on. Sorry. There goes my mouth. Let me first cover the agenda as we get into this. Today, we'll meet our panelists. So as you can see in video, we're starting to pop in here. I'm going to tell you a little bit about XenTegra, and then we're going to get into the meat of this webinar entitled Under the Hood, Building AI Apps That Actually Work in the Enterprise. This is going to be a very enlightening one. I'm looking forward to it. So let me start with the panelists. So I am your host. I'm the president of Modern Apps here at XenTegra. I'll tell you a little bit more about XenTegra, a little bit about what I do, but I also have with me someone we partner very closely with and delivers a lot of the AI services that we provide here at XenTegra. I have Stellar AI. Let me start with Zach. Zach, do you mind introducing yourself?
Hey everyone, thanks for joining today. My name is Zach Linder. I'm the COO of Stellar, and looking forward to digging in and showing you under the hood.
Thank you, Zach. John?
Hello, Jon Coulter, Director of Engineering here at Stellar. I'll be demoing a couple of our apps that we built leveraging AI extensively, so I'm looking forward to showing some of that stuff off later.
Thank you, guys. I'm really looking forward to this. I think it's going to be very neat to see some of the demo of what you guys have been working on and show people the art of the possible. So let me jump in and do just a quick 5-minute introduction of who XenTegra is. XenTegra was founded by Andy Whiteside. I know Andy for years and years and years. We both were working at big enterprises, and we both were really frustrated and complaining about the partners that we work with. And so XenTegra was really born out of enabling the customers in the form of true partnership. There's a lot of things that means, and I think Andy's done a good job of embodying that in what he's built out. We are a global company, so we are based in Canada, United States, and India, and I know we're talking with other regions as well. But the mission of XenTegra, and this is what we had gotten frustrated with other partners, is our mission is to engage, listen, deliver appropriate enterprise technologies to clients of all sizes. He calls this the 2.0 model, and I see it in practice ever since I've been here for 3 years, to try to break that mold of traditional VARs that are very transactional and let us focus on what really matters to you and make sure that you're successful. So we try to be more than just a partner. We try to really work with you, work with the partners that we work with, bring it all together and try to solve business problems that you have. So it is a different model. We do that through a variety of activities. One of the big things that XenTegra does, and we do it 3, sometimes more a week, is live in-person events, these webinars, podcasts, a multitude of items and things that we do to try to bring our clients, partners together to socialize, to learn. We do lunch and learn. So we do a lot of things around what we call building out our community so we can all educate, learn, and feed off of each other. So that's a big thing about how we differentiate ourselves as a new VAR 2.0. We do some wild things, such as provide 90% off conference passes to some of the biggest conference, ServiceNow, Microsoft conferences, Salesforce. We do a lot of passes that enables our clients to get there. While we do that, because we want to invest in our clients to get educated, to understand what are they using and what are the possibilities in those. So it's really a way that we invest in the knowledge of our clients and support our partners as well, our vendors. Other things we do to really show that we care, we provide a lot of complimentary micro assessments. We will get in, dig, pull back the covers, and understand the challenges that you have, where you may not be utilizing the products that you're utilizing, and really just give you our expert advice complimentary as to what we feel like you need to do and maybe your next steps. A lot of times that turns into us helping solve those. But again, that's just showing you that we provide the competencies and the capabilities of solving your problems with you. We are a one-stop shop, so I'll get into a lot of the things we do, but people sometimes ask, what do you do as a VAR? We don't just resell products. We don't just provide services. We just don't host. We do really all of that. A lot of that time is married together, and we do it across a variety of technologies in certain spaces. So we have different business leaders, such as myself. If you see the second one to the left there, I do modern applications, things that are natively born out of the cloud. AI is within my practice. So really it's about helping solve a lot of customers' issues around digital transformation activities, automation, agentic AI, things such as that. Trevor Mansell, he runs our managed services. We provide a lot of services to our clients, hosted and just managing other clients' infrastructure and environments. We have security and networking by Aaron Banner. Philip Sellers leads our modern data center, mixing it all up. modern workspaces, Bill Sutton, such as your Citrix and things such as that. And then we do have for our SMB clients a focus division led by Mark Vincent in SMB. So said I was going to make that quick. In a nutshell, that's the XenTegra difference, and I want to give Stellar a chance to do a quick introduction on them, and then we're going to get into the meat and potatoes of this webinar and look under that hood. So Zach, I'm going to turn it over to you. Let me stop sharing.
Awesome. Thanks, Fred. Let me get this going here. All right. So Fred did a great intro on XenTegra, and he said, as he mentioned, we partner closely with XenTegra on a lot of the AI needs and solutions out there. So Stellar, at the core, we are a services and delivery company that focuses on delivering real solutions, all while kind of slanted toward data, AI, automation. So all the things that we've been spending the last 10 years doing, getting our data environments built and cleaned and built. Oh, I'm sorry, I'm getting feedback. There we go. Better. Built and cleaned and set up, and really focusing on like AI application development, workflow development, data technology, business readiness, making sure that you've got the structure that needs to be in place to go execute on all this new fun and exciting technology, all while making sure that the human's at the center of this process, right? AI is fantastic. It's kind of magical, but it's not actually magic. But when you've got the human in the center of that process, making sure that it can actually execute is what we help all of our customers get to do. So the first question is like, do you have a plan, an AI plan or strategy? And of course, the answer is yes, probably to some degree, because all everyone is doing is talking about AI. Like every service provider has AI, every application has AI. Even Taco Bell has AI working at their drive-through, right? Like this is encompassing the entire world. So yes, you're talking about AI. Do you have a strategy? Probably to some degree. Do you have enough of a strategy? Is it fully encompassing? Probably not, but that's okay, right? That's the nation. That's the state of the nation that we're in. And so what does it mean to have this state, and what do we do next? So let's go back a little bit to see where we were. So 23, in fact, ChatGPT turns 2 years old here in just a couple of weeks. So that's kind of crazy that it's already been out here for 2 years. 2024, that was where AI was all over the news. 25 is where people are actually starting to implement a lot of these things. And then 2026 is really going to be the year of the agent, right? So think about things interacting and executing based upon our requests or prompts versus where we just get kind of one-for-one answers right now. So the key here is we've moved from experimentation into actually utilizing AI to run business processes. Jon, my peer on the call, he's said before, and I think it's so true, that even if we don't advance AI anymore, like let's say we're just at the cap, then we still have 10 years of improvements that we can make with all the existing processes, right? So we are at no shortage of opportunity to go improve the foundations of our business. So what does that really mean? Like how do we go build this enterprise AI? So one of my favorite people who speak on this topic, his name is Peter Diamandis. He says by the end of the there's going to be two types of companies, right? Those who fully utilize AI and those who are out of business. I used to think this was probably too shocking, but now the more that I'm in it, like by the end of the decade, yeah, if you're not using AI, I don't know how you're really going to participate, right? It's just going to encompass all parts of our daily lives. And so I think about that quote quite a bit. So as I mentioned before, Stellar doesn't believe that AI has to be hard, right? It can seem hard. It can seem overwhelming. There's so many new things, so many new topics and companies and ideas coming out all the time. So you really have to just process this one step at a time, right? Like if you're not doing anything right now, how do you start with some workshops or some readiness assessments? How do you kind of figure out where do you want to land? And Jon's going to show a great demo later on, like a real quick hit. And then once it's there, and once you're building the vernacular internally to your company, you can really start to see what the opportunities are. And so I think that's where it gets super exciting. So because of all the noise, it's important for us to bucket it in the ways, at least that we at Stellar look at this. And so we've got the 4 dimensions of AI. There's the foundational models on the left. These are the ones where the intelligence sits, right? These are the open AIs and Geminis of the world. These are what power many of the other solutions, but they don't really have a whole lot of products built on top of themselves. Then you got your point solutions. Several people probably have Granola or similar type of note-taking apps running during this meeting or during a lot of meetings. These are the ones where it's solely built with AI kind of at the core. Then you've got the ServiceNow, Salesforce, and SAPs of the world, amongst many others that have things like Agentforce built in that are workflow generators inside of the tool. So it's taking the foundational model capability, dropping it inside the tool. It's custom and specific to that tool and data model, but still provides a lot of capability. And then the space that we play in a lot at Stellar is what's the kind of the culmination of all those things. How do you connect different data sets to different applications to get to a specific outcome that is most likely unique to you? So it's really like modern system integration is a good way to look at this. It's just using all the existing tools and functionality and stitching it together in a bit of a more modern, different way. So inside of each of these applications, there's really some core pieces. And so there's your data foundation layer. This is kind of what I mentioned before. We've all been spending the last 2 decades getting our data somewhere, getting it usable, moving it, putting it in warehouses. It probably flows much more freely now than it has even 5 years ago. There's the context layer, which is where you kind of consider that the memory. This is where you might augment the brain. You've got the model layer, which is the OpenAI, Gemini, Anthropics of the world, and then the application layer. Like how do you actually go do this? So this is very consistent with normal software development, right? Like I said before, AI is not magic, but it is kind of magical. And that magical component is really only 10% of all the other normal software development, right? You still have all the entire life cycle and security and governance and compliance and testing and validation that you need to do. The AI component is just a chunk of that, but that's where you do see the magic. Now, the interesting thing is all those things that I mentioned with testing and compliance and governance, you can apply AI to that. And so that's where you can really start to see some exponential gains and get from ideation to practical application much, much faster. So one layer deeper inside of this are the building blocks. So data pipeline, we talked about this, are your ELT, ETL, your integrations, all of your quality components. The vector components, this is semantic searching. This is the best part here is a lot of tools already, or platforms already have the tools, whether you're Amazon, Google, Microsoft, something else, they probably have great vector tools, pipeline tools. A lot of that stuff is there, I think, which is important because it makes it easier to get started now more than ever. There's model orchestration. So as you're building an application, you need to think about how do you have prompting guidelines or limitations? How do you have a wrapper, a prompt wrapper, system prompt wrapper that even wraps the prompt of the user to make sure that it's using the right company context and language and brand voice and all of these other pieces? And then also, how do you enable the users to be able to edit the prompts as much as possible, giving them some flexibility while not breaking the application? That also doesn't require a code change, right? So a lot of times now, if you've got a standalone application and you want to go make an edit or an enhancement, that requires involving developers and code changes and time. If you can put a lot of that development effort in the form of English, in the form of a prompt, or in the form of a configuration item, that greatly increases the capability of the end user to get what they want and need, or make the tweaks that they need to go get the outcome that they're looking for without all the normal software development piece. And then lastly, you got your interface layer. We a lot of times we think about chat, right? That's a very common, the most common use case of AI right now in LLMs. It doesn't have to be chat. You can have APIs. A lot of the tools out there already are creating APIs based upon the application that you've got that makes super easy connection access to. embedded things. This could be a small component or feature of another application. So there's a ton of capabilities on how to start integrating AI into a new application, existing applications, or even be the backbone of something completely different. So now your data it needs to meet the model, right? So we've got the foundational models. These things are like the super brilliant. We always talk about it. When is general intelligence going to happen, and then super intelligence? I mean, we're probably at general intelligence already. I don't know how often everyone on the call plays with ChatGPT, but I'm continually amazed at how smart and thoughtful and creative it is all the time. So we are there. We've like blown past the Turing test, and that's awesome, right? So we've got like this amazingly scalable, smart thing, but it's not necessarily smart on all the things that I specifically want it to be smart on, right? And so this is where there's the notion of RAG, which stands for retrieval augmented generation. A RAG model is where you what I say is build the brain of your business. So think about your company tone, voice, brand, imagery, values, mission. All of this information is really important. So it gets the context of when it gives a response, how it should give a response. And then you've got all of your proprietary information, right? What are your policies and procedures? What are your core internal documents? What are the information that you might need to inform someone about your product? There's all of this internal information that you need to then store in there. And so you're building this brain. And a great part about this is all these documents that can really remain in place and just be accessed through integration points. And so if it's in SharePoint or Snowflake or pick your data store, it can all continue to live there. The AI is going to go out and pull this information and in some interval, it's going to store it. And now you're building this brain. And so now you've got to be very thoughtful on, you want to make sure the brain is good, intelligent, and accurate, and that it's got the right information. So there's a governance policy where humans need to be very much in the loop to make sure that we're getting only the right information in there. We don't want to have 12 versions of the same document with small little tweaks. It makes it very complicated to understand which is the right version, and if there are conflicts, which one does it pick? If you're using something like Snowflake or SharePoint, the permissions can flow through. Now, this isn't just inherited and out of the box, but it's definitely very possible. So if you've got a SharePoint document that is for your HR team or your finance team that has sensitive information, and that is contained inside of SharePoint, you can definitely enable your AI tooling on top of it to inherit that security protocol. So if someone tries to access that document, it's still blocked because of SharePoint permissions. The AI won't even give answers to information that comes from those documents. And so as we think about back to, do we have an AI plan or strategy? The reason we don't in some cases, or don't know where to go next, is because of security concerns and governance concerns and privacy concerns. And we haven't solved for all those things yet, but we're getting to the point of being able to feel much more comfortable there. So think about building the brain. We talked about uploading with content about your company and context about your company and proprietary information. There's also a lot you can do with pictures and images and visual information. So a lot of our customers have a lot of, some of them had like hundreds of thousands of images that are very applicable to their business. And think about like construction sites and home building sites. This information can then be all ingested into the central repository in your company's brain, and then organized, categorized, classified in an X number of ways. And then through natural language searching, you can say things like, show me a part of failed quality checks that we had. And it's there and present, and doesn't even really require a full application to be built. It's just kind of interacting with your data in new ways, shapes, and forms. So it really speeds the design of your operations. It reduces the rework and creates data assets, structured assets, from what traditionally is non-structured data, which is a really wonderful place to be. I said 2026 was going to be the year of the agents, and this is kind of what these workflows that work themselves are about. So if you think about We talked about the foundational layers, and then we talked about building the brain. We talked about all the content that go in the brain. Now you've got the system set up, and then agents can be built on top of these things. Models can be multiple models can be included in here, and this is where you really see your exponential gains, because once you've isolated and automated or included AI in parts of workflows, that can now be reused many times over. And so you can take this chunk over here and drop it over there, and maybe it creates connective tissue that really expedites or saves a bunch of time, creates a lot of new opportunity. And that's where I think it's going to get really exciting as these tools do more of this interaction. And I think we're really going to need to reconsider what our current workflows are. Our workflows right now are built because of how humans are constrained by time and capacity. If we reduce those or eliminate those constraints, our workflows might look completely different. So as you're building these models, some things to think about. You don't always need to use one model, right? You can have one application that uses every single model, or at least 3 or 4 models, depending on the need, right? So ChatGPT 5 has a lot of strengths and advantages, but it's also expensive and potentially time consuming in its response. You could use like a mini model, or you could use a Gemini Flash model. Those are all opportunities for you to save on expense, increase speed, and really not get any outcome difference. And so I think being thoughtful about model selection, testing, and trialing all those things, you can do full on process like order to cash processes that normally require multiple touch points from other systems, integration points, data validation, human confirmation. All of this stuff can be built into agential like flows. And then the term that is really going to facilitate this, that if you haven't heard of this, is definitely going to become very popular, MCP, which stands for Model Context Protocol. This is basically the new API. This is a consistent, standardized language that allows LLMs to talk to other LLMs. And so if you've got your own private agent built over here, and you need to communicate to a Shopify site or to a HubSpot or Salesforce site, those LLMs have a standard language that they can communicate through this MCP protocol. And then that dramatically makes the integration there much easier and quite a bit more extensive at this point. So there's going to be a lot more interesting stuff here. It's still super early, probably 6-9 months into it at this point, but it's really awesome. Keeping the human in the loop, because of all those things I just talked about, massive amounts of automation can always lead to quality degradation or gaps or missing components. And so making sure that the humans are really looking at that audit trail and ensuring that we know every step that the AI is doing. The nice part is we can have AI help us go do that. And so that all ties into my last point here before we get to the demos. The governance is kind of the superpower here. So like we talked about the inherited permissions that you can get. So I would lean into that stuff as much as possible. So that way you're not worried about creating your own security models, logging, and really understanding how users are using the system. All very easy, but then you can have AI summarize what kinds of things are people asking, or how are they interacting with this? And that will allow you to get real quick research and analysis on the utilization, are they asking a wide breadth of questions? Is everything narrowed in a certain area? There are lots of secondary follow-on questions. Then you can go back and tweak and improve your tool. Cost tracking and rate limiting, we've kind of covered this a little bit, but some of these models are 10x price point difference, right? So you don't want to just spend a ton of money on the latest version if it's not going to provide you with any additional value. Data classification is an excellent example here. You can get wonderful results very quickly for fractions of the cost. And so really understanding where's your cost and how are you continually optimizing it, very similar to what we do in the cloud environment today with all the cloud optimization that always goes on. So when thinking about this from an IT perspective, the quote that I've got down here is AI only scales when security teams stop saying no and start saying yes, but we could audit that, right? So enabling the business to go do the things that they want and need to go do, but having a good visibility of how they can go do that, I think is really important. And in the demos that Jon will walk through here in just a minute, He will kind of walk you through some architectures and some experiences that we've had that can help maybe bridge the gap on how do you get from the ideation point to actually turning something into reality. So with that, John, I will hand it off to you for the demos.
And John, real quick before you get started on the demo, so thank you, Zach. It's a lot of good information. There are people here watching, paying attention. If you have questions, one, you can put it in chat. Two, you can raise your hand. I can unmute you. So just want to make sure if you guys want to participate, ask questions, get more out of this webinar, feel free to raise your hand, ask questions. With that, John, I'll keep an eye on the chat or raised hands, and you can continue with the demo. Thank you.
All right, sounds good. All right, so first, I want to do a little setup on the scenario here. So one of our gracious customers said that we could demo it directly with their name included in the product, so it's no secret who this customer is here. But just to give you some background, the TLG is a company that helps do, to a very quick summary of it, they help companies do market research for new products that are launching. They've been doing it for many, many years. They have a huge corpus of existing projects that they've worked on through a variety of customers in a variety of industries. And all this information is cataloged in a QuickBase system that they have. So there's a lot of metadata, there's a lot of attachments, there's 5-10 years worth of information within this. And they came to us with the hunch, they just said, we know that there is a ton of institutional knowledge hidden inside all of this data, but we don't know how to unlock it. And we think AI can help us unlock that. So that's essentially the product that we're looking at here is what we're calling the discussion guide assistant. And I'm going to jump over to a quick architecture diagram, and then I'll come back to the demo. But essentially, in their QuickBase environment, they have years and years worth of information that's been categorized. And so what we have done is we've taken that information and we've said we're going to build a system that we call Magic Search. We came off a call with the customer, and I said to our team, I think what they really want is Magic Search, and that just sort of stuck after that in terms of a name for it. So essentially, like, how can a newer employee coming in to build a guide for a new customer, how could they possibly make use of all this institutional tribal knowledge that we have about what makes for a good discussion guide, what makes for, effective talking points, things like that, the style, the tone, the layout, all of these things that need to go into what gets built. We want somebody who's not been here for 10 years to still be really effective at unlocking that. And so this is a brief overview of the back end architecture that happens here. So there is the main application, which I just generically called web app here. There's their QuickBase environment. We're making use, this application was built probably 6 months ago. So GPT 4.1 is the model that it leverages, is a pre-5, GPT 5. There's all of this is running within their isolated Azure environment. So their data never leaves the Microsoft Azure stack. There's indexing services, there's blob storage. We're taking all this data out of QuickBase and keeping it in sync into a searchable index. This is all part of what Zach was saying with, like, there is AI, but it's 90% traditional application architecture and development in order to make a good application out of all of this, right? And so I think that's reflected in what's going in what you're seeing on the screen here is that, there's AI involved. And as you see, there's a lot of AI, as the application's running, but it is still kind of traditional application architecture is the way that you need to think about these things with the AI slant to it, right? For example, the AI slant is this thing called vector search is not something that many people made use of before the AI era. And that essentially just allows you to do context searching. We could get into the weeds of what a vector search is if there's any questions on that, but that's sort of what I mean by that's a new slant to what you would traditionally do within an application build out. So with all that preamble done, let me get to the application here. And so a new, I'm not sure what the job title would be at TLG would come in, but a newer person would come in and they would essentially have seeded the project in their QuickBase environment. All right, and out of that, they have a project ID, which I'm just going to paste in here. And it's going to go retrieve metadata from the QuickBase environment. There's also an opportunity to upload documents right here, and I'll drag a couple in. And these are things like the RFPs or the kickoff decks or any notes they've collected from the kickoff calls with their customers. This is just information that's getting kind of put into the system. And what will happen here is that we will leverage AI to extract what is essentially the key details of what this project is all about. And I'll go ahead and hit next and we'll see what that looks like. So what's happened here is a whole bunch of labels based on the project ID I put in. It pulled a whole bunch of attributes from their QuickBase environment. And right here, it's using this document intelligence service to extract the information out of those documents I uploaded. And those will be used as the search content. So like, what is the objective of this customer, of this project, right? It's essentially going to come up with an objective. And then this objective analysis that again was extracted from the documents and then summarized by AI will search against the entire history of XenTegra's back catalog, or sorry, not XenTegra, that's his company, of TLG's back catalog of projects that they've worked on. And so, this is making use of the vector search part of this. So there was an AI component that created a summary and then a vector search that did searching, and then we're returning information here. And so it only returned one result in this case based on the summary of what happened. We can come in here, and this was the same things that we saw on the previous screen in terms of what was extracted. I'm going to simplify this just to get a wider swath of search results. I think that this will surely result in more things. So you see here, there's several things that matched based on modifying the search. So you can see how a person can say, well, I know that there's more in here than what came up. Let me essentially modify the search string. And again, this is where vector searching is a different kind of search than keyword searching that you may traditionally think of with search. You can also, if you have another project, you can specifically you can specifically put in, you can search and find another project from the QuickBase environment to add into the context here. Again, this is just a lot of this, the AI stuff is kind of background activity. The rest of it's just a really nice application, right? In my opinion, really well designed by our UI folks that are just really good at this kind of stuff. So you end up with a really nice application at the end, in addition to the fact that it uses AI. I'm just going to go ahead and check a few things here. I won't get into the details of what all the options are because that gets pretty deep. But let's say we're done with our search activity and we're ready to move on to our outline. So what happens now is all of those documents that we found through search are now fed in through AI and given the original project goals, and an outline is generated. And this essentially acts in this case as 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. These are essentially 5 different prompt templates that will go back to the AI. So these are AI generated prompts, which the user has the opportunity to modify at this stage and say, like, here's the way I want to guide the guide that gets created out of this. So there's an opportunity to create, to add sections, to remove sections. Once the user is satisfied with the outline, they hit generate guide. And now it takes the original documents you uploaded, all the tags that have been selected along the way, all the past guides for both layout and content, any context you just gave in those outlines, and it all gets put together, and the AI is now generating a discussion guide for the user of the system here. So this does take a moment because of the sheer amount of content being analyzed and created, although there you go. There's the results that have come back. And you can see there's an introduction. All the things we saw in the outline there can happen. Within each of these sections, we can use AI again to modify it. So rephrase like Shakespeare. This is always my favorite thing to do because I always find Shakespearean language to be very funny once you have these things. So you can see, I'll zoom in a little bit. Pray, let us commence by foregoing a bond in advance. So it sounds like Shakespeare or something like Shakespeare, right? That's my favorite kind of tweak since I don't really know the business well enough to make a meaningful tweak to it. So this is the resulting. You can come in and modify each of these sections. There's also like a supplementary bot that's added in. And so this is just, you can ask it anything you want. It's like, this is not necessarily me asking about modifying the content. It's just talking with a good LLM, given all the context of the project up to this point, all the things that have been fed in, all the content that's been generated. You can just ask a question here as sort of like a chat GPT, but it already has all this context fed into it, sort of an experience. And so you can do that to help come up with new ideas, like just brainstorm things like that. And then at the end, when you're finished, you hit download guide and you get a Word document that gets generated out of this. There's also a download references, which will download any of the documents that went into this for context and reference. And actually some really neat stuff that I forgot to show off in earlier steps. I'm already too far into this at this point, is you can view all the reference documents. Again, that's just nice application interface design. Again, it's 90% good application design, 10% good AI implementation for a project like this. So that's the basic of this guide. If there's any question, or if there's of this app, if there's any questions, feel free to raise those digital hands and I'll answer them.
John, I have a couple real quick, totally
Sure,
off script, but so first of
sure.
all, I love the way you kind of phrase some of this, right? If you have a good application that's built here, AI is what's behind it. You got your data behind it, you got all your data sources. So when we think about people using AI, I think that's one thing people are missing is that really all of this is going to be driven by some app or some place that you're going to already. So yes, it's magical, but it's really a lot of this is there. Now that
Yeah,
AI capabilities are, you're just leveraging that and using it. So my
yeah.
real question here is that this looks very well thought out. Like all these different little things I see, like downloading this and doing that. Like I started thinking, like, okay, if they're using this, how does it progress to help them keep doing their job? And then you went
Hmm.
further into that was very funny Shakespearean stuff. I don't know how that's in there, why that's in there, but I like it. It's kind of cool. I'd want to demo that. I was thinking of how I could do that this afternoon, send my wife a nice letter. Either way, with that said, like this type of a project, is that small, medium, or large bucket size of doing a project like this for a client? What is that?
Uh, I, this fits in the medium to large size, I would
Okay.
say. This is actually this is an initial project that created real value for TLG right away. Like I said, that's sort of like, hey, the people who haven't been here the whole time since we founded the company, they don't have all the context. How can they get information out of it? And so that was like a really quick value that was added. We are in the process of expanding on this greatly. Like, okay, we did the discussion guide piece, right? That's how we got in here. We showed value. Everybody's really excited inside the organization. Here's 10 other ideas that have come up, but it's really just a matter of like, let's prioritize the ideas. Again, where's the more immediate value coming from, and then working on it. So this is the beginning of a larger project that we're doing with this customer
So,
to
John, I kind
expand.
of figured that was going to be the answer without even knowing it because conversations we have with Brett so far and what Zach said. I mean, what people need to realize is that just get started. You
Yeah,
don't have to know what you really want. Maybe just have a conversation, pull you guys in, let us come in there, throw an idea out there. It's really cool. It just says, throw me an idea. Get an idea out there, and you don't have to start with that medium to large size project. This probably started off being very small to say, do
yeah.
this one thing. But as you start seeing the capabilities and how quickly some things can be done and the ROI out of that, then it starts to go into like this. Like this is probably be an ongoing project that will never stop because I can see more bells and whistles coming. So, all right,
Yeah,
thank you. Again,
yeah.
anybody here wants to ask a question, raise your hand. It'll keep me from talking as much because I can do it all day.
I do have a part two to the demos here, by the way,
Oh,
Fred,
I know, I
for
know.
what
Go
that's
ahead.
worth.
You're
All
good.
right. So I'll continue again. If there's questions by you or anyone else, feel free because I really appreciate the back and forth. But so I want to point out one thing to your point about kind of just getting started. This is somewhat in line with what you're saying with just getting started. This diagram I showed, that was an architecture diagram, was actually created by a different tool that we created at Stellar. And we just did this internally. This is not something that was a client engagement. This definitely fits into the small category of what you were just asking, Fred. In fact, hyper small is what I would say, yet hyper valuable to me
Perfect.
in terms of the functionality of it. Um, you came off mute, so did you have a question there before I get into
No,
it?
I'm just getting prepared. I like it. Keep going.
Yeah. So we frequently have either customer calls that are like discovery sessions or sales calls or even like internal discussions about how things will work. And I find that like diagrams, visuals really bring things to life for people. And so the one thing I wanted to look at here, nope, sorry, that's the wrong one. And so this is what we call the mermaid diagram generator, or I called that when I started it. This application is entirely AI written and it uses AI for its task. So you can see here, and once I've come back to it, the diagram that I had as an architecture diagram. And this started out as just me saying to the application, here's roughly how this thing works, generate a diagram from it. And then there's a dialogue that goes back and forth with creating the diagrams. Like one thing that I notice about this is the web app itself doesn't really stand out. So let me just say, name the web app to TLG DG builder and make the background a unique color, right? So Mermaid is a markdown language for creating diagrams. I could write all this by hand, but boy, that's tedious, right? As opposed to just chatting and then having the application update it in real time. So there you go. There was an example of a very quick interaction to modify the diagram. I can make arbitrary changes to this diagram through this chat experience, and it helps bring clarity to things. Let me just show for the sake of, we were on a call with a customer, and we had like a 2 hour long discovery session. I'm not going to zoom in too much into this because it's really big, but we essentially said, here's this big complicated workflow that happens, and we just dialogued about it for an hour. I took the transcript from that and I said, turn this into a sequence diagram so I can actually understand everything that we said, right? And so you can see out of it a rather large sequence diagram, which once exported and opened up is readable. In its current form, it's very small text and there's lots of loops and things like that. But it was a very effective. And then I was able to take this and send it back to the customer. And I said, are we correctly understanding this workflow through this diagram? Right. And there was a little bit of feedback where they were like, actually, this is that and this is that. And of course, I came in here and tweaked it through the chat. And then there you go. We have an accurate diagram coming out of a discovery call. And this sort of stuff is extremely useful for us internally. And this is an example of what I would call a utility application here, right? There's no extensive security around this. There's no user management around this. It's like, hey, this is internal for Stellar to make use of. We're going to make this a really quick win. It's evolved over time. There are evolutions that happen to it, like the fact that there is a a drop down of all the past conversations. There used to be no tracking to it, for example. It was stateless. So I was like, okay, let's add a little bit of state tracking so I can come back and resume a conversation, things like that. But this definitely still fits into the small to extra small category. But the value, this is like, there's an 80-20 rule thing. This is more like 298 in terms of the effectiveness and the level of effort that went into it for me.
I mean, it's just the output of what you just described and had a conversation and talked about it in a workflow. Like I'm thinking, like you've got my brain on overdrive right now because I'm thinking about the conversations I have with clients right now that are trying to build out workflows within ServiceNow or other products that say this is how I want it to work. I mean, taking that conversation, throwing them this would save me, hours probably of trying to design something to go back and talk to them about. It's almost like you could take it, plug it in, and then say, "Give me 1 minute," right? Boom, pop it out and blow their mind. Like here's what we just talked about. Is that would save so much time in workshops and implementation stories. Love it.
And you can
think about reducing the.
Yeah, I was just gonna say I did no grooming to the transcript here. This is just a gigantic transcript that I put in and said make a diagram out of it, and there we go.
I love that.
Yep.
And Fred, I think this is a great point on when people think like AI is going to replace humans. In this case, like you could go do this stuff already, right? And Jon could go do this stuff already. But we didn't do it because it does take too long and it is tedious and it's a hard thing to get working the way you can. But if you can eliminate all those points of friction and go deliver something that provides better value for you and the customer, like that's a wonderful situation, right? So there's no loss of work or anything. If anything, it connects us much better. It makes it much more transparent. And in context, Jon vibe coded this thing in the course of a few hours, right? So the ROI on this type of internal advancement and internal tool is really, infinitely large. Whereas the other tool that we showed is, multiple hundreds of hours to go build, and a much more polished solution. Like Jon said, it's got security and user management and all your standard things you'd expect in an application. But you don't need that all the time, right? When you need it, apply it. But when you don't, just go hit the ground, move fast, go build something awesome.
I like it. I'm going to need something because only a machine could probably keep up with how fast I talk, but then taking what I talk and turning into something useful, we may be onto something here, Jon.
Absolutely. Yep. All right.
Well, that was awesome.
Well, Fred, that wraps us up with the prepared content. We'll take any questions that we might have. I've been looking at the chat. I've not seen anything.
No. I think a lot of what I'm seeing around this space is a lot of curiosity and people are wanting. So certainly we're going to share this webinar out for those and share it. And I guess I just want to encourage anybody who's live right now or going to watch this later that let's just get together and bounce some ideas. I mean, you can see Jon, Zach, and Brett's on here as well. So thank you, Brett. I saw you pop in, CEO of Stellar. But they've done so many projects and have so many of these conversations. We've had a couple dozen of these conversations with our clients, and it's really just finding that starting point, finding out where you are on that journey, and let's get going. I love that little quick, Jon, took you hours to develop that. People have these ideas, and I think it's time. Like you said, they're going to either be using AI here in the end of the decade or not be here. It doesn't have to be that complicated. Find some things that are causing you some pain points or things that are really taking a lot of time. Developing those types of diagrams, I can imagine would take a lot of times. I wouldn't even have thought about telling something, use these words to go create me a flow chart or a box diagram. That's great. So thank you both for your time.
We'll absolutely.
30 more seconds and then we can wrap it. So we'll see you. anybody wants to speak up. Very awkward 30 seconds. I do appreciate y'all's time, and I will call it here, but appreciate it. Hold on, let me see something quick. I got something for Command Center coming in.
Someone asked, how do you know the presenters aren't just AIs?
Yeah. Yeah. Great question.
We make too many mistakes, I think, is probably one indication.
That's pretty funny. All right, well, listen, thank you guys for your time. We'll be talking shortly, and take care.
Oh, wait, there is one
Appreciate
question.
it.
Oh, we got
There was
something?
a question. How do you see the trade-offs between reinventing the wheel against using existing AI services or products? Zach, do you want to take a shot at that, or do you want me to?
Yeah, I'll go for it. So, I think you have to consider reinventing the wheel if you feel like it's going to be a better wheel, right? I mentioned this earlier that I think you've got to reimagine what a process looks like. We're constrained by time and capacity, mental capacity as humans, right? That you can only be so multi-threaded as a human brain, and then you've got to be connected to other people in the process. There's a lot of defined choke points so you can measure and track and ensure that things are getting through at a certain throughput and quality metric. But maybe that doesn't need to exist that way. Like those things are still important, like quality and throughput and security, all that's still very important. But maybe the process doesn't need to be 56 steps. Maybe it can be done in 3, or maybe it needs to be 3,000, right? And so I think we just need to open our minds to what is the input, what is the output, what is my end goal, and what are the measurement items that I want to track against this, and then work with AI to go help come up with what is an optimal process for this. And it's not going to look the same for every process you apply it to, but I think it's really worthwhile to imagine what it looks like in a very different world, because then if that process is containerized and automated and autonomous to whatever degree, that can now be applied in a lot of different ways, right? If it's a human oriented process, that's like living mostly on paper, and it's not extensible in any way outside of the physical world. If we can virtualize these things, just like we virtualized all of our environments when moving to the cloud, that opens up a lot of possibilities. And I think that's kind of the area that we're encroaching upon.
Yeah. Yep. And from like a technical implementation sort of side of things, the way that I think about that is if there is an existing solution that solves the customer's needs, we will recommend that they like, hey, here's maybe something you didn't consider that we know about in the marketplace, right? We want to leverage best in class tools that are there and not reinvent that wheel. At the same time, there's a lot of wheels that, like as Zach alluded to, need reinventing to get where they need to go. We often talk internally, and Zach, I know, is a big advocate of this, is that Excel spreadsheets are like, you could do almost you could build every business inside of an Excel spreadsheet if you want to, right? Does that mean we should never have invented anything else that also does the similar things to what part of Excel does too? No, there's different ways to create workflows and processes and things that are a big improvement on a raw Excel spreadsheet. And so that's the way we think about to some degree, about our AI solutions as well, right? Does this actually meet the needs in a way that the user can make use of it, kind of a thing? And if not, then we'll say, like, no, a lot of times they'll come to us with a solution. We were considering using X, and because we know so many things in the space, we're like, we know about X. We've talked to people who have used it. Here are some pros, here are some cons. It doesn't make sense for what you're trying to solve. That's the way I think we think about it in terms of like how we guide customers when those things come up. Yeah.
Perfect. All right. With that, I think we're going to call it. I actually was looking at the chat, not the Q&A, so I'm glad that got kind of pointed out there. So I appreciate everybody attending. Thank you guys for doing the webinar with me, and you guys have a great day.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks.
We'll see you.
You.